Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, we would like to acknowledge the first group for their insightful discussion on what organizational communication is. Thank you for laying down the foundation because our topic builds on that. Understanding what organizational communication is helps us move forward to the different models and theories that explains how communication actually works within organizations. Before we proceed, let me introduce myself first. I am Joel RNJ Carrillo, and with me is Christine Jane Kokamas. Together, we will be guiding you through today's discussion. Now, our objectives for this report are the following. First, to explain the different models of communication and how they apply to organizational setting. Second, to discuss the theories of communication that influence organizational practices. Third, or lastly, we have to help us understand how communication flows, how meaning is created, and how messages can be misinterpreted in organizations. By the end of this discussion, we hope that everyone will not only be familiar with the models and theories, but will also be able to see how these concepts are reflected in real life workplace communication. Now, as we go through the discussion, here are some questions to keep in mind. First, how do these models help us understand communication better? Second, which theory or model do you think applies most to today's modern organizations? And how can these theories help us solve communication breakdowns in the workplace? Now, let's begin with the models of communication. Model serves as simplified representation of how communication happens. They help us visualize the process, the elements, and sometimes the barriers. There are several models of communication, but we will only focus on the most important ones that are often applied in organizational communication. So first, we have the Aristotle's model of communication. Now, this is one of the earliest model. It focuses on the speaker, the speech, the occasion, the audience, and the effect. In other words, it's one-way communication. For example, when a manager gives a directive to employees, there's no feedback here. It's purely top-down. The limitation is that it doesn't account for interaction, but in organizations, it explains situations like announcement, memos, or speeches. Second, this is the Shannon Weaver model of communication. This is known as the mother of all communication models. It has the sender, encoder, channel, noise, decoder, and receiver. It explains that communication can be disrupted by noise, which can be literal noise like static or figurative, like misunderstandings or distractions. For example, if HR sends an email about policy changes but employees misinterpret it due to jargon, that's noise. This model highlights the importance of clarity. Next is we have Laswell's model of communication. Laswell's model summarizes communication in a simple way. Who says what? In which channel? To whom? With what effect? This model is particularly useful in organizational communication when analyzing campaigns, messages, or reports. Next is we have Berlow's SMCR model. This stands for source, message, channel, and receiver. Berlow emphasized that the effectiveness of communication depends on the skill, knowledge, attitudes, and social system of both sender and receiver. In organizations, this explains why technical instructions may fail if the audience doesn't have the same background knowledge. It stresses that knowing your audience is crucial. Fifth, we have the Schramm's model of communication. Schramm introduced the idea of feedback. This makes communication two-way, unlike earlier models. He also highlighted the concept of a field of experience, the shared background between sender and receiver. For instance, if a supervisor and employee don't share the same technical knowledge, miscommunication can occur. In the workplace, feedback loops like employee surveys or Q&A sessions are applications of this model. Next is we have Barnlund's transactional model of communication. This model views communication as a dynamic, simultaneous process. Both parties are sender and receiver at the same time, continuously exchanging verbal and nonverbal cues. In organizational communication, this applies to team meetings, brainstorming sessions, or negotiations where everyone is actively influencing each other in real time.
Good day, everyone. So, before I continue to explain those theories of communication, let me explain first what does theory of communication really mean? Theory of communication explain that how we interact and make sense of our world. They help us understand various aspects of human communication, from the media's influence to how relationships develop. The first theories of communication is Speech Act by Austin and Searle. Language is not only for conveying information but also for performing actions. These theories goes beyond the idea that language is just for conveying information. It proposes that when we speak, we are also performing an action. There are three components of speech act. First is the locutionary act, the act of saying something in which it is literal meaning of the words. The second speech act is the elocutionary act, it which it means an intention or purpose behind the words. For example, when your friend told you that he or she was hungry, but the truth is he or she just want to go to canteen to hang out or to chill or to have fun or to get some attention from his or her crush. Well, the perlocutionary act, the effect or consequence of the words on the listener. For example, your statement, I'm hungry. It might cause your friend to offer you a snack. The second theory is the cultivation theory by Gribner. Media exposure shapes how people view reality. This theory suggests that the more time an individual spends watching televisions, the more their perceptions of reality is shaped by the media's portrayal of the world. This is a long term effect where heavy TV viewers begin to believe that the world is more like the one they see on screen. For example, when you're watching a K dramas or BL series or even those novels that we read, is likely a college setting level, and you were amazed by how college life was so fun. But in reality, it's the opposite of it. But because we're into it, we really think that it's was that really thing. Another example is that when someone who watches a lot of crime dramas might believe that the world is more dangerous than that it actually is. This known as the mean world syndrome. The third theory is agenda setting theory by Macomb and Shaw. Media doesn't tell people what to think, but what to think about. By selectively reporting on certain issues and giving them more prominent coverage, the media determines which topics are important in the public's mind. Fourth theories of communication is spiral of silence theory by Elizabeth Newell and Newman. This theory proposes that people are less likely to voice their opinions on controversial topics if they feel their viewpoint is in the minority. This is driven by a fear of social isolation. As a result, the perceived majority opinion appears to grow stronger, and the minority opinion becomes even more silenced, creating a spiral effect. The media plays a key role in this by often presenting a single dominant viewpoint. The fourth theory of communication is use gratificational theory. Audiences are active, using media to satisfy these needs. Focus from what media does to people to what people do with the media. It views audiences as active and goal oriented in the media. Consumption: people use media to satisfy specific needs, such as information, personal identity, social interaction, and even entertainment. Information means seeking knowledge and education. Personal identity: finding reinforcement for personal values. Social interaction: connected with others and discussing media content. While entertainment: escaping from daily life and relaxing. The sixth theories is the framing theory by Goffman and Mann. How information is presented influences how people interpret. Theory is closely related to agenda setting. While agenda setting determines what to think about, framing theory explains how to think about it. A frame is the way a news story or message is constructed to emphasizes certain aspects of a topic while downplaying others. This influences how the audience interprets the informations. For example, a political event could be framed as a protest, emphasizing citizens' rights, or as a riot, emphasizing chaos and distractions. The seven theories of communication is the cognitive dissonance theory by Leon Festinger. This theory describes the psychological discomfort or the dissonance that a person feels when they hold two or more conflicting beliefs, ideas, or values. To reduce discomfort, people are motivated to change their beliefs, alter their behaviors, or rationalize their actions. For example, a person who enjoys eating fast food but knows it is unhealthy. It might be reduce their dissonance by telling themselves it's not bad for you if you only eat at once in a while. If the eighth theories of communication is the uncertainty reduction theory by Berger and Calabrese. People seek information to reduce uncertainty about others. This theory explains how and why people seek to reduce certainty about a new acquaintance during an initial interaction. The goal is to increase predictability and feel more comfortable. People use three strategies to accomplish this. First is the passive strategy, observing the other person from a distance. Second, active strategy, seeking information about a person from a third party. Third strategy is interactive strategy, engaging in direct conversation with the person and asking questions. The ninth theories of communication is the expectancy violation theory by Judy Berger. This theory focuses on what happens when a person's expectation for a communication interaction are violated. The reaction to the violation can be either positive or negative, depending on the communicator reward, how much the other person is liked or valued. For instance, if a stranger stands too close, a negative feeling of you might feel uncomfortable. However, if someone of you find the person besides attractive strands that close, you might interpret it as a positive and welcome violation. The tenth theories of communication is a social penetration theory by Erwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor. This theory uses the metaphor of an onion to describe how interpersonal relationships develop and explains that relationships progress from a superficial to an intimate level through self disclosure. As a relationship deepens, people peel back the layers of their personality, revealing more personal information. And the last theory of communication is the symbolic interaction by George Herbert Mead and Herbert Blumer. This is a sociological theory that possesses that human behavior is shaped by the meanings we create through social interaction. It emphasizes that we don't react to the world, but we interpret and define it through the use of symbols, such as language. Our sense of self is also formed through these interactions, as we see ourselves as others see us. So that's all the theories of communication.
To wrap up, models help us visualize the process of communication, while theories help us explain why communication happens the way it does. Both are essential in understanding organizational communication. Now, let us go back to our earlier questions. Which model or theory do you think applies best to today's modern organizations? And how can these help us prevent or solve communication breakdowns? Thank you, and that ends our report.